He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Well, the British Parliament said no, so Britain won't be in on this. France is backing off, so they say no, pretty much. Doesn't Obama at least owe us a speech to the nation to tell us exactly what's going on? I mean, he's having these interviews and he's giving away the strategy anyway. Why doesn't he at least have a speech with the American people and tell us why he's doing this? A friend of mine wrote me earlier today, and he said, I thought you were for strong presidential powers, when it comes to national security and war making. I am. But this has nothing to do with national security. Zero. This has nothing to do with an imminent threat to the United States. Zero. I'm not necessarily opposed to us getting involved in matters where there's genocide, obviously. Look at World War II, where the United States was actually late. But you go to Congress. The president drew a line in the sand. He called it a red line. He didn't go to Congress. He hasn't gone to Congress yet. He had a phone call with the Speaker of the House. Well, good. That's not Congress. That's the Speaker of the House. You're not going to build popular support for something like this unless you try. But even more than that, you don't just fire a bunch of cruise missiles into a country where we have enemies on both sides. Now, I'm no fan of Assad, the terrorist nutjob who's been running Syria, the inbred who was handed a country by his father. On the other hand, Al-Qaeda, on the other side, not exclusively, but enough, where they're decapitating people and eating hearts and doing, the usual things. The fact of the matter is Al-Qaeda has declared war on us. So what is our foreign policy? The Muslim Brotherhood has declared war on the entire West and anybody who practices a religion they disagree with, or those who don't practice a religion at all. And what's America's position vis-a-vis the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt? Well, we used to support them. Now it's hands off, but that's bad enough. So the truth is, if this were put to a vote in Congress, it would lose. That's why he won't go to Congress. That's the truth. Now, what if, after some cruise missiles hit Syria, Syria or Iran attack Israel? Are we prepared to go in? Because that's going to be a full-fledged war. Are we prepared? And furthermore, while the president does these things, at the same time he's hollowing out the military. Whatever military assets we have, destroyers, carriers, you name it. It's despite this president's slashing the military. Truth be told, this is still the Reagan military. Anyway, this is another example of a president who does not respect the rule of law. And no, I'm not Pat Buchanan. I'm not an isolationist. And no, I'm not Bill Kristol. I'm not an interventionist. I told you what American foreign policy, from my perspective, ought to be, and I wrote about it in Liberty and Tyranny. The purpose of our foreign policy, the purpose of our national security, the purpose of our military actions is to preserve and promote the United States of America and our allies. There's no ideological thing here. Human rights, democracy project, these are absurdities. But as I say, if there is genocide and it moves us to take action, the president consults with Congress, Congress participates in the decision-making, and then we go. Or we don't. I just feel that the way this president conducts himself in foreign policy and domestic policy is unacceptable. Nothing new has happened, except moments ago, as I just mentioned, the British Parliament said no. The French are now backing off. The Russians are sending some ships into the Mediterranean. They don't have far to go. Syria is a Russian client state. They're not going to just stand back and let it go down. They're not. You know what bothers me about all this? I'll tell you, what bothers me about all this is the greatest threat in the Middle East is Iran, the Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran. Now, we've gone to war in Iraq. We're going to fire whatever we're going to fire in Syria. We've gotten involved in Libya. We've gotten involved in Egypt. And yet Iran, which is the biggest problem, we haven't gotten involved in at all. I have no idea what our foreign policy is, and neither does the President of the United States, quite frankly. I can tell the man is befuddled in these interviews, and it must drive the military nuts to have to deal with him. Drives me nuts just watching them deal with him. All right, that's the beginning and the end of it right now when it comes to Syria. There's nothing else to tell you. People who go on and on for hours on this, on TV and so forth, they're just filling time. So our imperial president took some more actions today as applies to the Second Amendment. And who better to help us with this than our buddy John Lott? And it sounds scary, he says, writing in Fox News, military weapons being reimported back into the United States, or people getting guns without background checks. But the reception being given Obama's 2 new executive orders on guns largely relies on ignorance of how the current rules work. And isn't that always the case? Obama's executive order banning the reimportation of so-called military weapons really only affects M1 Garand 30-06 rifles. These rifles have been used in the civilian marksmanship program and are mainly purchased by collectors. And at one time, they were military weapons, quote unquote, but they were used in World War II and the Korean War. Nobody uses them today for committing crimes. No other U.S.-made military rifles are being imported. Furthermore, this semi-automatic rifle is functionally no different than any semi-automatic deer hunting rifle. They fire the same bullets at the same rapidity and do the same damage as the other deer hunting rifles. The only difference is that these old rifles tend to be relatively heavy. In the past 60 years, manufacturers have learned how to make lighter versions of these guns. So despite the scary rhetoric, the White House is leaving out one important point. It isn't pointing to any cases, not one, where imported U.S.-made military weapons, quote-unquote, have been used in a single crime. And the reason is obvious. There probably aren't any. So this is bad for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's inconsequential. Number 2, however, the president is exercising powers he does not have yet again through his executive order. Now, the second executive order about corporate registration. Corporate registration. Well, you know, bad guys can purchase guns through corporate entities, and it'd be impossible to trace their backgrounds. I thought to myself, who the hell even thinks of this? Well, apparently not many. The only corporate registration is for Class 3 machine guns. Again, the Obama administration doesn't provide examples of people using a corporation to register handguns or semi-automatic rifles as a way to bypass criminal background checks. More importantly, it fails to point to any cases where such guns have been used in crimes. Corporations are used primarily to obtain fully automatic machine guns, as they're usually out of the price range of most citizens. They run around $20,000 each at a minimum. Yet when registered to a corporation, any officer is allowed to possess the machine gun, but the point that the transfer occurs still requires an NICS check for the person actually picking up the gun. In other words, this is meaningless. So what happens under current law is that if a gun is registered to a corporation, then anyone who's an officer in the corporation, is allowed to use the gun. So with many actions these days by Obama, the president doesn't have the authority to rewrite the current rules, and changing these rules for corporations requires congressional action. But this is typical with Obama, isn't it? When he made the false claim, as an example, as many as 40% of all gun purchases take place without a background check. Flat out lie. But then again, we're used to that, aren't we? So the president has issued 2 executive orders writing laws that he has no power to write unilaterally that are meaningless substantively. The worst of both worlds, really, aren't they? That's our imperial president. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Man, do I have a great guest next hour. You see, ladies and gentlemen, people are starting to come out of the woodwork now. On the left, and yes, some on the right. Very troubled by this idea of an amendments convention, you see. They're apparently very happy with the direction the nation's taking. I mean, why not allow the Supreme Court to amend the Constitution, or the President to amend the Constitution, or Congress and the bureaucracy? I mean, after all, we like the status quo, don't we? No. Why should we turn to the words of the framers at the Constitutional Convention? They wrote this stuff, not me. Why, do you think you're smarter than them? No. I think I agree with them. We're going to have a good talk about this at the bottom of the next hour with the foremost expert on the planet, apart from me, of course, on the convention process. Because we're starting to get some weird... Okay, I'll give you a taste of this, but I want to save it for the second hour. There's a fellow that used to be the president of Pepperdine University. He's now at the Hoover Institute. And this guy wrote a piece. He said, Mark Levin makes a strong conservative case with weak constitutional arguments. What's this guy? What did he find out? I read it. It's like 400, 500 words. It's pathetic. This fellow David Davenport, it doesn't even appear to me that he actually read the book. He creates these phony issues and then addresses them. I mean, if you want to write your own book and then critique your own book, go right ahead. And of course, everybody who's not all that conservative quotes Bill Buckley. It's hilarious. But it's just really kind of thin stuff, silly stuff. I'm thinking, this guy used to run Pepperdine, and he's at the Hoover Institute? David Davenport, that's scary. And I may or may not address this later. I think I will. And the person who I will have on, his name is Rob Nadelson, Senior Fellow in Constitutional Jurisprudence at the Independence Institute, the Montana Policy Institute. He's a former law school professor, and he's a scholar. And there are others. We had Randy Barnett on here, Georgetown University Law School professor. Great guy, brilliant. I don't always agree with him, but I don't always agree with anybody. And he was on here last week. And what do the opponents have? Scare tactics, generalities, superficiality. I mean, folks, they can support the status quo. They can pretend that we'll elect 60 conservatives to the Senate over and over and over again to reverse course. They can pretend that all we need is a Republican president to keep nominating Republicans to the Supreme Court. We've been doing that, by the way, for a long time. Somehow they progress, they evolve. But we're in this position today where the Constitution is really abused. It's been disassembled. And some of us want to bring it back together. And then he says, I must be the utopian. I must be the czar coming up with these amendments. Ladies and gentlemen, he clearly didn't read the book. What do I say in the first chapter? These are just my reform proposals, my amendment proposals. Obviously, I'm not king of some state convention. The delegates to the state convention, they'll make up their own minds based on what the state legislatures suggest that they do. I'm laying them out as what I consider possibilities that actually might help us. But I have no way of imposing them, so how am I a czar? This is what I mean. This guy used to head Pepperdine, and now he's at the Hoover Institute. It's stupid. You want to address this issue. I warn all you liberal crackpots, all the pseudo-conservatives, all the guys with degrees and the funny hats at graduation and all the rest. I want to warn you all. You better be prepared, because some of us has actually really, really dug into this, and we know far more than you'll ever know. So when you come up with your scare tactics and your silly arguments and you throw your myths around, some of us do know what the framers said. Some of us actually know what the founding fathers said. Some of us actually know what occurred before the nation actually became a nation. What conventions were, how they were conducted, who sent delegates, how they were selected, how they voted. We know. And you don't. It's obvious with your silly articles. But we're ready. I'm ready. I can't wait. But they don't matter, ladies and gentlemen. You matter. It's important that you're convinced, which is why I wrote the Liberty Amendments. And not one of these people so far has proposed a serious alternative for restoring the Republic. Not one. Because they have none. Not one of them has proposed a serious alternative based on what our framers said and wrote. Not one. They defend the status quo, and they pretend the status quo is what the framers would support. Out of one side of their mouth, and then out of the other side of their mouth, they condemn what Washington is doing. They don't make sense. It's time to give it up. It's time to embrace what the framers said. All right, more when I return.
This is America's Constitutional Convention. The Mark Levin Show. Call in now. 877-381-3811.
All right, we got a full board. I'll get to the callers in a second. I want to throw this issue out there. Ready for this one? Uh-oh, here it comes. You know Ted Cruz, Mr. Producer? You've heard of that name? Senator from Texas? He's an American citizen, a naturalized American citizen. He can run for president of the United States. Oh, it's true. It's true. Here's the Cato Institute of all places, libertarian think tank, Ilya Shapiro. As we head into a potential government shutdown over the funding of Obamacare, the iconoclastic junior senator from Texas continues to stride across the national stage. And with his presidential aspirations as big as everything in his home state, writes this writer, by now many know what has never been a secret. Ted Cruz was born in Canada. Oh, my God! But does that mean that Cruz's presidential ambitions are gummed up with marble syrup or stuck in snowdrifts altogether different from those plaguing the Iowa caucuses? Are the birthers now hoist on their own petards, having been unable to find any proof that Obama was born outside the United... by forcing their comrade in boots to disqualify himself by releasing his Alberta birth certificate? No, actually, it's not even that complicated. You just have to look up the right law. It boils down to whether Cruz is a natural-born citizen, quote-unquote, of the United States, the only class of people constitutionally eligible for the presidency. You see, the Founding Fathers didn't want their newly independent nation to be taken over by foreigners on the sly. So what's a natural-born citizen? Well, may I add this? It's not in the column. It seems like every jerk with access to Google has decided what a natural-born citizen is. And they insist that everybody agree with them. But the Constitution doesn't say. But the framers' understanding, combined with statutes enacted by the first Congress, indicate that the phrase means both birth abroad to American parents in a matter regulated by federal law and birth within the nation's territory regardless of parental citizenship. The Supreme Court has confirmed that definition on multiple occasions in various contexts. Oh, my God! It's true. Wait a minute. We have a meeting scheduled in my mother's basement to go over this. And we're gonna post a lot of comments on the Mark Levin social sites. Let me continue. There's no ideological debate here. Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe and former Solicitor General Ted Olson, who were on opposite sides in Bush v. Gore, among other cases, co-authored a memorandum in March 2008 detailing the above legal explanation in the context of John McCain's eligibility. Recall that McCain, lately one of Cruz's chief antagonists, was born to U.S. citizen parents serving on a military base in the Panama Canal Zone. In other words, anyone who is a citizen at birth, as opposed to someone who becomes a citizen later, that is, naturalizes, or who isn't a citizen at all, is what we're talking about. So the one remaining question is whether Ted Cruz was a citizen at birth. And that's an easy one. The Nationality Act of 1940 outlines which children became nationals and citizens in the United States at birth. In addition to those who were born in the United States or born outside the country to parents who were both citizens, are interestingly found in the United States without parents and no proof of birth elsewhere. That would be people from Mars, I think. Citizenship goes to babies born to one American parent who has spent a certain number of years here. That single-parent requirement has been amended several times, but under the law in effect between 1952 and 1986, Cruz was born in 1970, someone must have a citizen parent who resided in the United States for at least 10 years, including 5 after the age of 14, in order to be considered a natural-born citizen. Cruz's mother, Eleanor Dara, was born in Delaware. Is Delaware part of America? I think so. Lived most of her life in the United States and gave birth to little Raphael Edward Cruz in her 30s. So why all the brouhaha about where Obama was born, given that there's no dispute that his mother, Ann Dunham, was a citizen? Oh, Lord, I go down this road, all the kooks will be shooting at me. And he says it may be politically advantageous for Ted Cruz to renounce his Canadian citizenship before making a run for the White House, but his eligibility for that office shouldn't be in doubt. Remember George Romney? Born in Mexico. Remember Barry Goldwater? Born in the Arizona Territory. Cruz is certainly not the hypothetical foreigner who John Jay and George Washington were concerned might usurp the role of commander-in-chief. Here's the practical problem, in addition to all this. Do you think any court in the land, any court, because you have to adjudicate this, right? Do you think any court in the land is going to say, you know what, you were born of an American citizen mother in Canada, therefore you're disqualified? There's really no historical basis for this. And actually, I could have added to this piece. You look at the 1790 Naturalization Act, which had some very terrible things in it, by the way. Cruz would qualify under the 1790 Naturalization Act. And there were a lot of founding fathers involved in that act. The act of the first Congress. So can we cut it out? No, No. People do not want to cut it out. They're going to keep it up. They're going to show up here and there, waving some crap in front of my face or somebody else's. Don't you read the Constitution? Yes. It says natural-born citizen. Yes. Well, look at that. I did read it. It says natural-born citizen. He's born of an American mother. Yeah, well, it doesn't mean that. Well, what does it mean? Hey, look, haven't you read the book by Cuckoo Clock over here? And please, save it for somebody else. As a matter of fact, bother Hannity. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. No, Mr. Call Screener, no calls on this either. I'm just not interested. This bores me, the whole topic. I'm just raising it to address it, knock it down, done with it, hopefully never to be spoken again on the Mark Levin Show. Let's take some calls, shall we? Kerry, Houston, Texas, the great KTRH country, home of my buddy Michael Berry. Go. All right, I gave you a big intro. Now you're listening to the radio. How may I help you?
Hi, this is Terry.
Yellow.
Hello.
What's that? I can't. What are you saying? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you. Yes.
Oh, good. I'm sorry. I'm on my cell. Must have been.
Hold on, I can't hear you again. What's going on there?
Can you hear me now?
Now I can. Yes, go right ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking my call. I wanted to say that.
Is your name Kerry?
To me, yes.
Can you prove it?
No, I cannot.
Now my call screener thinks you're operating under a false name. Is that correct?
Yeah, probably so, because I was born in America. So.
Okay. Well, so are a lot of goofballs. Go right ahead.
Well, anyway, I wanted.
I'm just messing with you.
The reason people are attacking your book is because the statists always attack things that scare them.
Well, you know what? You know what's interesting, Kerry? There's really not a lot of attacks. They're just starting. And you know what's interesting about these attacks, Kerry? They're so pathetic.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. And the thing about it is that, but they come out immediately because they want to squash any ideas or any constitutional ideas that might remedy and get us out of this horrible situation that we are in.
You are right on.
I'm convinced, Mark, that the statists, both in the Republican and the Democrat Party, and the ones that scare me the most are in the Republican Party, they don't want to slow down this rapid growth of government. All they want to do when they say they want to elect Republican presidents, it's so that they can enforce the same power that has come into play. In other words,
well, you know what, Kerry, you're exactly right. I mean, if they're not going to run as constitutional conservatives and they're not going to make their case to the American people so they have a mandate if they're elected, as the way Reagan did. Reagan didn't hide from any of this. He said what he believed in. It was straightforward, traditional conservatism. We don't get that from a Bob Dole or a John McCain or a Romney or whatever. We get mealy-mouth, we get hedging, we get timidity on the campaign trail. So you're exactly right. Let me ask you this, Kerry. Do you really think that Mitt Romney would have abolished somehow Obamacare? Because I don't.
No, I don't either. I think that was just lip service to try to get some Republican, the conservatives, on his side. But he had no intention of doing that. Romney was a statist. I'm convinced of that. And, until we get people like Ted Cruz, and the reason he's being attacked is because he scares the statists.
You're exactly right. You know what, Kerry, you're a good call. We got through all the static. Don't hang up. I'm going to send you a signed copy of the Liberty Amendments. Thank you, my friend. I love this debate. I love taking on the ruling class and their mouthpieces. This is smoking them all out now. I love this debate. And I hope you're liking it, too, because it's going to get more intense. The more popular the book comes, the more people who read it. And here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. I would ask you, don't allow, these negative reviewers. There's only a few so far, but they'll pick up. Don't allow them to tell you what's in the book. because so far the two people who've commented on it haven't read it, and I can prove it. Also, our great guest in the next hour, he's going to explain that it used to be the liberals who used fear tactics to attack this process. And now some conservatives, particularly those who've been hanging around a long time, particularly those who drink the polluted water from the Potomac, they've thrown in with them. This book is targeting the ruling class. This book seeks to bypass, by using the Constitution, by using what Madison and Franklin and the others gave us, to bypass them, because they're not going to reform themselves. And there's a fiscal fight in Washington approaching, as you know. In fact, it's due to start next month. It's likely to rattle the confidence in the American economy again. I'm talking about the 2014 budget and the debt ceiling debates. More uncertainty. Now, will you be prepared if one day our economy craters under the weight of government debt and inflation? Now's the time to consider diversifying your portfolio with a tangible asset that has survived economic catastrophes. With Goldline's two-way price guarantee program, if the price of your qualifying purchase drops, you can call Goldline to reprice it at the lower price. If the price of your qualifying purchase goes up, you can buy more at the original price. Either way, Goldline has you covered. So call them today. The only precious metals I trust company is Goldline. And to learn more about how you can qualify to receive this limited time special, give them a buzz. Also, for a limited time, when you call Goldline for its free investor kit and mention that I, Mark Levin, sent you, Goldline will also include a free commemorative medal that I designed with the great Ben Franklin on one side, Independence Hall on the other, and the free investor kit. So call Goldline right now, 1-877-365-2646. Read Goldline's important risk information to see if buying precious metals is right for you. And by the way, that commemorative medal, I can tell you right now, we're getting down on our inventory. We're near the end. So call 1-877-365-2646, 1-877-365-COIN. That's 1-877-365-COIN.
Mark Levin.
Hillary Clinton born, Ryan, by the way? Have we ever seen her full-length birth certificate, Mr. Producer? I don't think we have. Okay. Was she born of American citizen parents? Do we know this for a certainty? No, we don't. I would suggest the birthers chase that one down. I really would. Let me throw this out there. Hillary Clinton. As a matter of fact, let me make this announcement. Hillary Clinton, I want to see your birth certificate. I want to see her. And while I'm at it, this Harry Reid, I want to see his birth certificate too. I don't believe this guy was born naturally. Notice I didn't say natural born citizen. I said born naturally. I don't believe it. So we want to know about Harry Reid, his situation there. Hillary, her birth certificate. Where was I? Luke, San Francisco, California, the great KSFO. Go.
Hey, Mark, big fan, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you.
You and Andrew Wilkow turned me into conservative.
Really? And you know Andrew's a buddy of mine. He'll tell you I'm his mentor. Go ahead, ask him.
He calls you the great one, like we all do. But
he's a good man.
These executive orders about the M1 Garand rifle is just ridiculous. No one is going to commit a crime with this rifle. It's nearly 4 feet long. It weighs over 10 pounds, and it has a type of magazine that you cannot reload until you are expelled the entire magazine.
So why do you think Obama's going through the motions here?
I think he's just getting in where he can, really, honestly, and he's just taking a nab at gun collectors who are also Second Amendment supporters usually. I really think that's it. I can't think of any other reason.
And what do you think about the morons in the media report this breathlessly? Like, My God, the former military weapons, we're going to block them once and for all.
This gun was designed in 1928. Nobody is using this gun to commit any
No, you break your shoulder with the damn thing. It's so heavy.
Exactly. It's like carrying a tent pole around. It's not discreet whatsoever. I have one more quick comment about your audiobooks, your past audiobooks.
Yes. I know. Everybody wants me to read every chapter.
Would read them because the guy who reads them, I hate to say, is a little
All right. Listen to me. I can't read the entire audiobook. I don't have enough oxygen in my lungs, but I do read the beginning, and I do read the end. So, all right, Luke. Now you can imitate me, can't you, Luke?
I can imitate you. I could try.
Okay, so you can record me. Just read the book yourself to yourself, record it doing me, and there you go.
Okay, I read your other two books, and I love them, and I'm definitely going to get the new book.
All right, I'll give you one. I hear you fishing out there. I'll send you one. Don't hang up, Luke. Let me send him a Liberty Amendment signed. Folks, this is the perfect time for it. It's a great long weekend. Some of you are going to be on the beach. Not all of you, some of you. May I say something about the beach, by the way, walking up and down the beach? I have to say this. No offense. If you're built like a sperm whale, what the hell are you doing with your shirt off? Honest to God, it's grotesque. I'm not trying to be offensive. Am I, Mr. Producer? No. You agree with me? What's wrong with you? Even Hannity wears a burqa. He won't be seen without a shirt on. So, I would just say this as a public service announcement. If you're not built to be naked on the beach, then don't be naked on the beach. Think about the rest of us. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. I am Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You know what, folks? I don't ever remember so many people talking about a potential military action who don't know anything about what we're doing or the law behind it. People just keep talking about it. It's very strange to me. Anyway, so we have people protesting fast food restaurants for not doubling the minimum wage. Now, these protests are obviously organized because labor unions that are not representing people in government but representing people in the private sector, their membership's hurting. They need more members, and they need more dues, so they can do such wonderful things as electing more left-wing nut jobs to office. At some point, you folks in these labor unions, you need to rise up and throw these bums out that run your unions. Nobody, I say nobody, has done more to damage the employment of union members than Barack Obama. Nobody. Whether it's the coal mines or the steel mills, whether it's our commercial fisheries, whether you're a truck driver, whether you work on an assembly line, whether you work in a public utility, Obama is destroying the heartland of this country and industries in this country intentionally. He uses unions to get out the vote, to fund his various campaign activities, and yet he really represents the elitist snobs in the environmental movement, among others, who are putting hard-working people out of work. This is a sideshow, these buffoons, these bosses who are sending these people to protest at fast food restaurants. Millions and millions of people, union and non-union, who can't find jobs, who've been thrown out of the workforce because of Obama's policies, not to mention Obamacare, but all of his policies. Millions of people should be marching on Washington and surrounding the White House, not some fast food restaurant, but the White House, and demand that this president stop destroying their industries and stop destroying their jobs. But you'll never see it. You want to know why? Because this jerk Trumpka and all the rest, first and foremost, they are liberal Democrat hacks. Party first, not union first. There needs to be a rebellion in the union ranks against these sellouts who are taking down with salary and benefits over $500,000 a year on your sweat. Here we have a report, Breitbart. The percentage of Americans who have a job or are looking for one, known as the labor force participation rate. We've talked about this, but here's the newest information. It has plunged to a 34-year low. That is a disgrace. This man stands at the Lincoln Memorial, goes on and on and on about the next generation, about job opportunities. What has he done? He's destroying jobs. He goes on about education. What has he done? He's done everything he can to be the special pleader for the monopoly known as the National Education Association. The statist is not about people. Black, white, red, green, whatever. The statist is about government. Government. Every proposal they have is to expand government, to increase the debt. It's not about people. It's about groups. It's about statistics. It's about getting the vote out. It's about alliances. It's not about what's right. 34-year low participation rate. So the federal government is expanding, as I say, while it's imploding. That's a disaster. Now, those folks out there who disagree with me and don't believe that we ought to look to the Constitution to restore the Republic, what is their solution? Hey, I got one. Let's elect more Bushes. That'll fix it. Oh, how about this one? Let's nominate guys like John McCain. Huh? That'll do it. How about Chris Christie? Oh, yeah, he'll fix it. Is that it? Well, then we're doomed. Because that's not going to do a damn thing. I'm not saying we shouldn't fight it out at the federal level and in the Republican primaries. You know I believe that. I don't think there's been a talk show host who's done more to press that case. But I also know that that's not going to fix the constitutional structure that has been intentionally, over the decades, destroyed. That I also know. Now look at this Trump guy, this big jerk who I've been talking about. There's Trumpka from the Politico, the quasi-news site. AFL-CIO President Richard Trumpka says the labor organization is targeting some new states in 2014, namely Texas. Now, I've made this case, and I want to repeat it. The Democrats are desperate to destroy Texas. They want to take it over the way they took over Colorado. Colorado was once a bright red state. That was the test case. Soros funded this. The unions went after it. The ethnic front groups for illegal aliens, they went after it. They all concentrated on Colorado. They took over the governorship. They took over the Secretary of State position. And there you are. Before you know it, a bright red state turns into a blue state. Well, they know what I know and you know. If they can take over Texas, there's almost no way for a Republican, not even a conservative, there's almost no way for a Republican to win the Electoral College. You can't give away every election. California, New York, and Texas. You can't. So Texas is their focus. This is why Eric Holder went after Texas immediately on the voter ID law. Oh, it's like a literacy test. Moron. It's no literacy test. Oh, well, it's like a poll tax. Moron. It's not a poll tax. And you want to hear something I truly believe? And I mean this. If you're too stupid to get a free government-issued photo ID, then maybe you shouldn't vote. It's like when I get on the airplane, I sit back and they run that ridiculous video on safety measures. You know, grab your pillow, grab your ass. If the plane goes this way, lean that way. And then they come to the seatbelt one. This is how you work a seatbelt. And I'm thinking to myself, is there anybody on this damn plane that doesn't know how to put a seatbelt together? Doesn't know how to click it in? Well, if they are, I'm on the wrong damn plane, I can tell you that. So anybody who doesn't know how to put on a seatbelt shouldn't be on an airplane. What do you think of that one? Anyway, back to Texas. So this Richard Trumka, our federal government, they're all focused on Texas. Got to turn Texas blue, you know. Then the game is over. Not quite, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, it makes it much harder. But if you bypass all of this nonsense, which is what the framers tell us to do, then we're on the offense and they're on the defense. And I'm going to tell you something. The more people are writing, challenging, quote unquote, barely challenging, they're like the Washington team playing against the Globetrotters. The people challenging me. They're the Washington team, you know, with all the midgets. Up. All right, Association of American Midgets or whatever the group is, do not write me, okay? I don't care. Dwarfs, is that better? The Association of American Dwarfs, don't you write me either. And by the way, Fat People Organization, don't you write me either about what I said on the beach. Because I must remind you, I am the chairman of a group I formed long ago called Fatties United, or FU.
Mark Levin.
I hope I didn't offend anybody the last segment. So here we have Trumka. Lays out plans for 2014. He said the AFL-CIO would focus on taking on states where the immigration battle was most at play, and in doing so, branch into some new territory. This is amazing to me. This is amazing to me. Again, I want you folks who are union members, and non-union obviously too, but union members to listen to this. Your boss of bosses, Trumka, is pandering to illegal aliens because they want to get them legalized. They want them to become dues-paying members. And I'm thinking to myself, what about the law of supply and demand? Are there all that many jobs out there right now? No, there aren't. So let's just regroup and look at this for a second. So where are our radical left-wing policies taking us? Number one, fewer and fewer jobs and less people in the workforce. Number two, amnesty for illegal aliens, pathway to citizenship, so more of them become union members. Number three, what? Higher unemployment. I don't get it. I don't know why there's not a rebellion within the union ranks. Knocking these old, bloated, sellout union bosses out of their positions and replacing them with some fresh blood. And at this point, it should be obvious that capitalism creates jobs. That's right, union and non-union jobs. Capitalism. At this point, it should be obvious that capitalism creates jobs in fast food restaurants. Now we've got this movement now. spontaneously, all of a sudden, 1,000 people show up in one place, marching around a McDonald's. Look at these companies. Let's just take McDonald's for a minute. Under attack endlessly over the quality of the food, the content of the food, that they don't report this, they don't talk about that. Under attack constantly. Then their hiring practices and their wage scale under attack constantly. And what the hell do? They serve America hamburgers and French fries and so forth and milkshakes to millions and millions of people who want the service, and they want it as cheaply as possible. And it's totally offensive, isn't it? No, it's not. You know what it is? They see a golden goose, and they want those golden eggs. The government wants them. The union bosses want them. And these phony groups, double my minimum wage. Not doubling anything. The hell is this? Double my minimum wage. Oh, okay. Why is it called a minimum wage? Is it called a maximum wage? No, it's called a minimum wage. Do you know why it's called a minimum wage? Why? Because it's a floor. And you're not enslaved at the fryer. You don't have to go to Hamburger University. You can do whatever you want. And a lot of people, they start at the lowest rung of a fast food restaurant or, say, a warehouse store, and they work themselves up into more senior positions. Then they start training for junior management positions, and but nobody wants to take the time to actually, contribute to these companies. Hey, I want to double my minimum wage. And this passes for compassion. People making demands on these franchisees. Well, you see what the company makes? First of all, it's none of your business what the company makes. And if they make so much money, you can participate, You can buy some stock in McDonald's. But that aside, these restaurants, most of them, not all of them, are owned by small businessmen and women. And their margin's pretty tight, which is how they keep the price of hamburgers down. Now, unlike McDonald's, which actually tries to keep the price of hamburgers down, unlike McDonald's, which actually tries to keep the price of French fries down, what does your government do? Hey, electricity prices are necessarily going to skyrocket. Well, if McDonald's Corporation was run by Barack Obama, he'd be saying your hamburgers and French fries are necessarily going to skyrocket. Of course, they go out of business. Anyway, let's take a call here. Let's go to Patrick in Las Vegas on the Internet. How are you?
Hey, Mark. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to offer a rebuttal to what you claim, and I think once I get through my thought process, you'll understand.
I think we only have about a minute and a half, so go right ahead.
No problem, sir. You always say that the Liberty Amendments is breathing life back into the Constitution, and I disagree. We don't have a living Constitution. But that said, what I think the book does is it breathes life back into this movement that just started in 2009 and culminated in the 2010 Republican takeover. So I think that's very important. And I'm halfway through your book. I'm in this section, and I had a question, and I'll take it off the air. But what does it do with the agencies and the bureaucracy, the amendments dealing with the bureaucracy?
Well, it does a couple of things. First of all, every department and agency in the federal government sunsets in 3 years. So it has to be affirmatively reauthorized by Congress by roll call vote in specific legislation for that agency or department. And if it doesn't occur, then they disappear. That's number one.
And this is my main question, though, is what does it do for cases that have already been decided, like case law? And what does it do for...
Well, now, hold on now. That has nothing to do with that amendment that I'm talking about. Are you talking about a different amendment?
No, the bureaucracy part, I get it. But what does that do with, how the courts... It's amazing. I follow politics, and all of the stuff that you're talking about is I've never even heard of. And so it's amazing to me what's going on with the federal bureaucracy. You have to prove...
Let me circle back around, Patrick. That music means I have a hard break. And at some point during the next half hour, I will address your question. We'll be right back with a great guest.
Mark Levin, the modern voice of the Founding Fathers. This is the Mark Levin Show. Dial in now at 877-381-3811.
You know, it is fairly rare that I'm very excited about having a guest on the program. And the guest I'm bringing on now, he's a retired professor, University of Montana Law School. He's senior fellow in constitutional jurisprudence at the Independence Institute and Montana Policy Institute. He is probably the foremost expert on the planet of this state constitution process, convention process. And it's Rob Natelson. How are you, sir?
I'm great. It's a great honor to be on your show, Mark.
Well, it's my pleasure. And, I just think it's time to really address the myths and the deceit and the falsehoods and whatever we want to call them, people who attack this constitutional process that the framers gave us. I've had enough of it. I've heard about it. I've read about it. I've now written about it. I want you to explain to us, just very briefly, and I want people to understand this won't cover the whole waterfront, but it'll cover enough, just the basics of how this state convention or amendments convention process works.
Sure. The founders had a long experience of conventions among the states. The states would send representatives. They would be given an assigned job to do. They would make a proposal. They would go home. And so when the Constitutional Convention was considering how to amend the instrument, as you have pointed out in your show, George Mason said we need a way to get a procedure for having a proposed amendment bypassing Congress, because Congress could become abusive or exceed its power. And the other founders agreed, and they wrote this into the Constitution. And basically, what it provides for is that two-thirds of the state legislatures, that's now 34 state legislatures, pass resolutions directing Congress. They're called applications, but they're mandatory. Directing Congress to call it what the Constitution calls a convention for proposing an amendment. And they specify, in general, what kind of amendment they want. Congress calls the convention. It specifies the place and time. It states the purpose of the convention according.
And then that's it. Congress is done, correct?
That's right. Well, that's right. Congress's role is, and you use this term in your book, ministerial. That's exactly right. And and then the states come together. Each state legislature appoints its delegates, and those delegates meet in the place of the convention. They vote one state, one vote, and they decide whether to propose an amendment based on their agenda. And then if they do, then the amendment goes through the same ratification process any other amendment goes through.
Well, where did this notion of a runaway state convention process come from, which is repeated endlessly now?
You know, that is a very good question. One of the things I do is I track down constitutional myths, and this one is a classic. It was first mentioned in the 19th century, about a century after the founders. But it really got a lot of publicity in the 1960s, 1970s from left-wing sources. In other words, people who were arguing against an amendment to rein in the Supreme Court or arguing against an amendment for a balanced budget. People like Arthur Goldberg and Richard Rovere of the New Yorker, Charles Black of Yale Law School. These were all left-wing folks. But it's one of the great ironies of history that some groups on the right have, not knowing where these arguments came from, have picked them up and have now used them as reasons for opposing an amendments convention.
And how could you even have a runaway convention if the state legislatures are appointing the delegates with a specific subject in mind and sending them there, and they have the power to pull them back, and ultimately the several states have the power to ratify or not? How does this become a runaway?
Well, it really can't. I mean, we have a runaway Congress. Okay, that's the reality.
Exactly.
The runaway convention stuff is a myth, but part of it is misunderstanding. I mean, they don't understand that these delegations are appointed by the state legislatures. They don't understand the state legislatures can pull them back. I think that some of them have the vision, and this was widely shared at one time, the vision that a convention for proposing amendments is some massive National Assembly elected by popular vote around the country and can be stampeded. But that's not the way it was set up at all. The founding era record makes that very clear.
What about people who say, well, that's all great, but, they met in Philadelphia to amend the Articles of Confederation, and what they did instead is they threw them out and they replaced it with a Constitution. That's an example of a runaway convention. Now, I know what you say, but how would you answer that?
Well, I'd answer it actually the same way you did the other night, and that is to point out that, number one, contrary to mythology, Congress did not call the Constitutional Convention. The Constitutional Convention was called at the recommendation of a convention that occurred the previous year, and it was called specifically by resolutions from Virginia and New Jersey. It was called outside the Articles of Confederation. That's why it wasn't bound by the Articles of Confederation. The delegates were duly appointed by the state legislatures, with one exception, and that person was appointed pursuant to a resolution of the state legislature. And they got together in Philadelphia, and when they were commissioned, when they were given their instructions, they were given documents, and those documents told them what they could and could not do. Congress passed a resolution, but Congress really had nothing to say in the matter. It was the states that commissioned their delegates, and if you look at the commissions, you find out that of the 12 states that participated, 10 of them sent commissions that were broad enough to go beyond amending the Articles of Confederation, and most of the delegates from the 2 states that didn't have that authority didn't sign the Constitution. So it was a convention given a responsibility to recommend an entirely new political system, and that's what they did. These were men of honor. And frankly, this smear against the founders that they exceeded their authority has gone on for too long.
That's gone on for too long. This stuff about how you and I and others, we pretend we're smarter than James Madison and Benjamin Franklin and George Mason. We do no such thing. We're looking at history. We're looking at scholarship, much of which is yours. We're looking at the Constitution itself. Did they not write these words? Did you write them or did I write them?
The founders wrote them. I mean, the founders wrote Article 5, and they intended us to use that route for precisely this situation. I mean, an abusive runaway Congress was something that they feared, and so they wrote into the Constitution precisely this mechanism for dealing with it. The other thing that's important to remember, Mark, is we don't have to be James Madison's here, because this isn't a constitutional convention. We're not trying to write a whole new constitution.
Right.
What's going on is that delegates from the state legislature will be charged with the responsibility of writing one or more amendments as proposals, period. And then those proposals will go to the states for consideration.
And yet, it's interesting because some of my fellow conservatives, not a lot, by the way, so far, but some of my fellow conservatives say, don't you believe in the Constitution? I mean, what are you trying to change? And I'm thinking here to myself, we have the Supreme Court that meets. It's a runaway constitutional convention there. We have Congress passing these laws that are not constitutional, like Obamacare, and the president signing them. We have all kinds of stuff going on in the federal government. They are defending that. They are defending the status quo as far as I'm concerned, Rob Nadelson. They are not defending the Constitution.
That's right, they're not. They think they are, but if you read the writings of some of these people, they're actually very critical. For example, they basically say the Constitution was illegally adopted by a runaway convention. Some of them look at Article 5 and they say, gee, why is Article 5, there's so much there that isn't explained? How do we know what the founders meant? Well, if you take the time to go back and look at the history that the founders were dealing with, and the fact that many of these people at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia were old convention hands themselves. Roger Sherman, for example, was in his 5th convention. He knew how they worked, and therefore they didn't have to itemize everything in Article 5. They kept it short the way they kept the rest of the Constitution short.
Now, you point out in a response today, in an excellent piece, The American Thinker. If you want to see it, folks, it's on my social sites, Mark Levin Show, Facebook, Mark Levin Show, Twitter, as well as MarkLevinShow.com. We got a lot of Mark Levin Show stuff going on here, Professor. But in any event, you even said there was a dry run once.
That's right. This is an extraordinary story that very few people know about. But when the Civil War threatened and 7 states had already seceded, the Commonwealth of Virginia, which did not want to secede, said, let's see if we can call together a convention of the states in order to come up with a compromise constitutional amendment to prevent this incipient calamity. And it was very widely accepted as an idea. It was not an Article 5 convention, but because it didn't submit its proposal to the states, and it wasn't called under the two-thirds applications, but it was a convention of the states, and they came up with a constitutional amendment which they presented to Congress, and of course Congress did nothing. But what's important here is that this convention was exactly like an Article 5 convention in all of its procedures. One state, one vote. The convention chooses its own officers, adopts its own rules. They go through the debates. They follow the same procedures that they followed during the founding era. And when the whole thing was over, and it was over in less than a month, they presented an amendment that may very well have, number one, headed off the Civil War, and number two, put slavery on the road to extinction. So it was a successful convention. Of course, Congress, as has often happened, was deadlocked and did nothing to deal with the crisis.
And you know, it's interesting, you're not really involved in this. I came up with what I suggested are my reform amendments, and obviously a convention will do whatever it wants. But I'm putting them out there as examples of what I personally think would be a good way to go. So some guy who used to head Pepperdine and is over there, he writes, and look at Levin, he seeks to be a czar. Wait a minute. I have no power to impose my will on anybody or anything. People, you know, Professor, people are not reading this stuff. They're not reading your stuff. They're not reading my book. They're not looking at the history behind the Constitution, and they're knee-jerking all over the place.
Well, we have czars, but they're not us. I mean, the czars are part of the problem, aren't they?
Exactly.
There is a group right now, and you can access it at conventionofstates.com is the address, which has a proposed application, and they want a convention that would be broad enough, as I understand it, to accommodate or to consider virtually every amendment that you propose. I think that maybe one half of one amendment would not be within the call. But if people are interested in pursuing the Mark Levin amendments, conventionofstates.com is one way to go.
God forbid. You know, no. We instead, it's better that we go on the track that we're on now. You know, you're a national treasure, Rob Natelson. I want you to know that, and I'm going to bring you back again if you don't mind, because I am psyched. I am ready for this fight. I want to put down all these phony myths and claims, and it's about time we bring this to the forefront. You've been working on this for a couple of decades now. You've gotten my attention. I've actually gone to a lot of these original documents on my own, as you can see from the book. And I've also gone with the amendments to original documents as well. It's time to have this fight, don't you think?
You betcha. You betcha. Keep
well,
up
let
the
me
fight,
tell
Mark.
you. God bless you. God bless you. You've done a magnificent job, and your time has come.
Thank you, sir, and you do a great job as well.
All right, thank you. You take care of yourself. I hope. Mr. Producer, let's put this in the best of. Can we do that? I mean, this is very, very important. Doesn't have to be in the next best of, but in a best of. It's very important, folks, that you be confident in this, that you aspire toward this. Because it's not what the critics say. It's just not. Stamps.com. We're constantly hearing how important it is to save money, especially if you're running a small business. But what about saving time? It's just as valuable. That's why you need Stamps.com. With Stamps.com, you can avoid those time-consuming trips to the post office. Get official U.S. postage using your own computer and printer. It's easy. And unlike the post office, Stamps.com is open 24/7, so you can do your mailing and shipping when it's convenient for you. Access all the services of the United States Post Office right from your desk. Priority mail, first-class mail, international mail, packages, everything. certified mail. I can't think of all of them, but you know what they are. You get all this for just a fraction of the cost of one of those postage meters, by the way. So with Stamps.com, you'll save both time and money. And I've been using Stamps.com for years. I'm telling you from personal experience, it is really convenient. So I'd like you to try Stamps.com today. Right now, use my name, Mark, for this special offer. A no-risk trial plus $110 bonus offer, and that includes a digital scale and up to $55 free postage. Don't wait. Go to Stamps.com before you do anything else. Make sure you click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in Mark. That's Stamps.com. Enter Mark.
Mark Levin.
Jay, Seattle, Washington, the great KVI. Go.
Hello there, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you.
I wanted to get your...
I'm a long-time broadcaster, first-time listener to your first-time call. Go right ahead, my friend.
I wanted to tap your vast constitutional wisdom to try to define the actual scope and intent of executive orders for the president. If I understand it correctly, the original intent of executive orders were to be confined to altering or affecting the rules and regulations within the executive branch.
That has always been my understanding. That has always, from my perspective, been the intent. Basically, the president is the executive branch. He's got all these aspects of the executive branch, so he issues an executive order ordering people within the executive branch of the government to do X, Y, Z, usually implementing a federal statute or implementing some rule that applies to individuals within the executive branch. It certainly is not or was not intended to be in lieu of legislation.
So how can we nail this guy to the wall to that?
Well, how can we nail him against the wall? Well, you know how it works. Either Congress acts by defunding or obstructing or delaying or impeaching, or it's not delayed.
Well, it seems to
and let me just add, the Supreme Court more and more has gone along with all of this, which is why I wrote the book, because, hold on, I just want to finish to answer your question. Which is why it's almost hopeless if you think that the federal government and these different agencies and departments and branches within it are going to reform themselves. They simply are not.
Okay, how about to the tact of just ignoring it? I mean, just...
Well, who's going to ignore it?
The states, like, for instance...
But they're not going to ignore it. So how about it is fine, but they're not going to. How do we know? We have 50, 60, 70 years of this.
Man.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't read your book yet, Mark.
All right, well, it's going to help you. As a matter of fact, this book is going to do more to reverse depression in this nation, I hope, than anything I can think of. Thank you for your call, my friend. I hope so. Carl, Boynton Beach, Florida, the great Mark Levin app, the best app of all apps. Go right ahead.
You got it, Mark. I've been listening to Liberty Amendments, and I just got to say that the essence of the first chapter, Chapter 1, I think should be the Republican response to Obama's 2014 State of the Union address, because it concisely and simply reveals the actual State of the Union.
Well, that's very, very kind of you. You won't get a fight out of me. Now, you might out of Grover Norquist and some of the sycophants that support him. No, we can't have Levin. Oh, my God, Levin! No, he represents the base. We can't have the base. As if they're ever going to ask me, truthfully, to get involved in any of this, which they're not. All right, my friend, thank you for your call. We'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
All right, this leak is unacceptable. I'm Mark Levin. The number 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. I feel what the NSA is doing in collecting our phone numbers and tracking our phone calls, tracking patterns. This is information that belongs to private companies, telephone companies, server companies. I've discussed this many, many times before. They don't need to seize it and nationalize it. If they need that information, they can go through the normal processes and get it. They can even go through other processes and then after the fact get approval. But there is no reason for the federal government to nationalize all this information, and I do not believe that it's helpful in fighting terrorism or anything else. And they haven't given a single example where it is. Now, that said, I've also said that anybody who leaks operational information that might endanger this country, that's a different story. Actual operational information, that's a different story. And when you leak the budget of our intelligence agencies, almost 200 pages long, and the information in that budget, not so much the numbers, but assessments about the strength of this agency or that agency in fighting one or another terrorist state, I'm sorry, folks, that is unacceptable. Because that can, in fact, hurt our security and endanger each and every one of us. Again, I don't take this doctrinaire position, an ideological position. Oh, that leak, leaks are always good, leaks are always bad. But this is unacceptable. And Snowden leaked this information to the Washington Compost. So the fiscal 2013 budget and all the explanations for programmatic activity, weaknesses, and strengths are now available in many respects, to the whole damn world, including our enemies. And the summary describes cutting-edge technologies, agent recruiting, ongoing operations. There shouldn't be a conservative or libertarian in America who defends this. Not one. You can say no to unconstitutional searches and seizures. You can say no to the nationalization of private information, which is what the NSA has been grabbing with these phone numbers and patterns of calls and so forth. But there's no justification for the leaking of our cutting-edge technologies, our agent recruiting system, ongoing operations. None, period. See, I've never been quick to say this guy Snowden is a hero. I've never been quick to say he's a traitor. I've tried to address what he's done specifically, the information that he's provided. But if we classify Snowden as a traitor for releasing this information, and I think you can, then how do we classify the people at the Washington Post? How do we classify the people who own the Washington Post, the editors at the Washington Post, the reporters at the Washington Post as anything but traitors? Because that's exactly what they are in this instance. That is exactly what they are. Oh, but don't worry, says the Washington Compost. We're not going to publish everything. Oh, great. So now we have to leave it up to the statist liberals at the Washington Compost to decide what we should or shouldn't know. Right? But don't worry, see, apparently Snowden gave them a lot of information because they're just kind of putting it out here and there. U.S. spy network successes, failures, objectives detailed in their summary of the budget. cutting-edge technologies, agent recruiting, ongoing operations. But the Post is withholding some information after consultation with U.S. officials. Sensitive details are so pervasive in the documents, the Post is publishing only summary tables and charts online. Well, that's nice of them. They're traitors, aren't they? Leaking it is one act, publishing is another. So they talk about what the spending has been for the CIA. And by the way, committees of Congress already know this. They have to approve it. And they lay out different types of investigations they're pursuing, priority targets like China, Russia, Iran, Cuba, and so forth. It's stunning what the traitors at the Washington Post have done. Stunning. So this is different in fact, in substance, in form from the NSA data collection that we were talking about, collecting data on American citizens. This is actual counterterrorism, real honest-to-goodness intel national security activity with operations and technologies and training and who's being targeted overseas, what countries are being targeted, which countries are the greatest threats, where our greatest weaknesses are in countering them. So now the enemy, whether it's a state or a terrorist organization, they know much of what our government knows. That is the definition of traitor. The Washington Compost can't go bankrupt fast enough for me. It's been a disastrous piece of crap newspaper for decades. And this is just more evidence of that. Same with the New York Slimes, another piece of crap newspaper. Now, the only thing the New York Slimes was good at keeping secret, or really tried to keep secret, was the Holocaust, as a matter of fact, and the genocide that took place in Europe. Don't report that. No. It's true. They've even written columns about themselves, how outrageous they were. That they had to keep secret as much as they could. So anyway, I wanted to bring this up. You know, if I were one of the backbencher hosts, I would say, now how can I be consistent? Or maybe I should mention, I am totally consistent. I am totally consistent. The NSA should not be collecting information on you and me. We haven't done anything. And if there's some urgent need for it, they know where to get it, and they know how to get it. They don't need to duplicate it or nationalize it. This is different. For the slow backbenchers out there in this business, I just want to repeat so they can try and keep up. Giving out operational information, training information, technologies, our weaknesses as a nation vis-a-vis our enemies and potential enemies, that's serious business, folks. Very, very serious business. I am not in favor of weakening our national security. I'm not in favor of making it easier for our enemies to plot against us. I'm not in favor of Americans being slaughtered. The NSA data collection does nothing to stop any of that. This release of this information could, in fact, do enormous damage. Traitors. So the question isn't whether Snowden's a traitor. In this, he is. The bigger question is, are the people at the Washington Compost Corporation, are those liberal corporatists dressed up as journalists, are they traitors? Well, any one of them who was involved in this, yes, they are. They're traitors. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Let's go to New Jersey, the Garden State. WABC. George, you're not a Christie-crat, are you?
No, not at all.
Just double-checking. Can you prove it, yes or no?
Let me check if I have my Christie-crat card.
All right, my friend. Go right ahead.
Yeah. To change the Constitution, we can't even control what they're doing now. If you put that on the table, there's going to be no control at all as to what they can change.
Oh, my God. We just spent an hour on this. Hold on, slow down now. We just spent an entire hour on this. The first part of the first hour and part of the second hour. You're so wrong. Let me suggest to you download the program. I mean, I'll do this another day, but it's not fair to the people who've been listening to do it all over again right now. Download the program get the podcast, and take a listen to hour 2 in particular, okay? And by the way, you say, well, what's going to go? The federal government's not going to listen. They're not listening now. That's the whole point. You move ultimate decision-making in certain key instances out of the federal government. 3/5 of the states make the decision, and it's not a question of whether the federal government listens. It's a matter of what the states do. So if the states override a Supreme Court majority decision, as an example, it doesn't matter what the Supreme Court says in response to that. The states aren't going to adhere to it. But you really need to understand that it is not out of control, this process, in any respect. What's out of control is the federal government. The state legislatures select the delegates. The state legislatures can remove the delegates. It is a single-purpose or multi-purpose convention. It's not a plenary or general convention. How do we know? Because the states will say why they're calling for the amendments convention. The federal government has Congress has a ministerial role, like a secretary, basically saying, okay, the resolutions are here. You can meet here at this time, at this place. These are the subjects that are raised, and that's it. And you bypass the federal government. And we had an expert on earlier, Rob Nadelson, and I've been talking about it myself. There's no runaway convention. This is something that was brought up by the left over the years, who constantly want to concentrate power in the federal government, in Congress, and to exclude the states and the people. So really, don't knee-jerk on this one, George. This is very, very important, okay?
I agree. It's 100% important, and I don't want to put any more on the table than needs to be put.
Oh, you didn't hear a word I said, did you?
Yeah, sure I did. Sure I did.
All right, my friend. Thank you. There we go. I don't want to put more on the table that needs to be put. Now, I don't even know what that means. All I know is there's a lot on the table that's been put there. And we are trying to breathe some life back into the Constitution. An earlier caller, Patrick from Las Vegas, said, well, we don't have a living and breathing I get that. I'm not talking about the liberal interpretive scheme, which is no holds barred. What I'm talking about is breathing life back into the Constitution, reestablishing it, revitalizing it. That's what I'm talking about. Why do people oppose that? Why are people afraid of federalism? I thought we supported it. So it won't be a runaway convention, folks. You have a runaway federal government right now. Let's continue. Let us go to Dave, Bloomington, Illinois, the great WRPW. Go.
Oh, hey, Mark. Well, always good to talk to you. Hey, you are the best talk show I've ever talked to. No brag, just fact. You are great.
Have you ever talked to another talk show?
No, a talk show host. I've talked to you before. Right. I've used that expression to you before. I know you know what that
you're a great man, my friend.
Hey, I was going to tell you, I've been going through your old books before reading the new one, and it inspired me to ask this question, and it came up just with this new thing that came up with these people that are trying to get the $15 minimum wage thing going. I'm from North Dakota, and I'll tell you right now, anybody that wants to make $15 an hour or more working at a fast food joint, go up to North Dakota. But
you know what? Hold on. That is a damn good point. That is a very, very good point. There are some places in this country where you can get paid $25 or $30 an hour because labor is short and in great demand, and North Dakota is one of them. You want to know why? Because North Dakota is the new Hong Kong. That's why. Because North Dakota has embraced its natural resources, and North Dakota mostly on private property. People are making a profit. People are getting wealthy. People are living well. And the wages are up, not because the government says so, but because the private sector can pay them. That is a great point, Dave.
Well, thank you, Mark, and that comes just from reading your books. I got to tell you, I've been passing your books around to other people, and you've got other people thinking. I passed out your Liberty and Tyranny book, and this person I've passed off to says she can't believe she never even considered some of the stuff that I've been talking about, and it's just great, Mark. You are Paul Revere. Wow. But the thing I was going to tell you with this $15 an hour, though, the people in North Dakota can't live on that $15 an hour raise because the rent goes up. You know, and so this whole idea that I can't send my kids to college on minimum wage, well, you're not going to win at $15 an hour either.
Well, here's my attitude. If I can't send my kids to college on the wage that I'm earning, I'm looking for another job, or I'm working two jobs. I mean, how do you think? Before there was a minimum wage, did people eat? Yes. Did they clothe themselves? Yes. Did they have an education? Yes. Did they buy automobiles? Yes. Could they pay for electricity? Yes. How the hell did the world – here's my question. How the hell did America prosper? Did we get this huge middle class, quote, unquote, before the minimum wage in the 1960s? How the hell did that happen? How the hell did it happen that America became the greatest economic force on the face of the earth before the New Deal? With running water, with flush toilets, with electricity, with roads, with automobiles, with airplanes. How did that happen without government, my friend?
How did we make any of the roads and the bridges and anything without government involvement beforehand? Mark, it was just because people wanted them and they realized there was a way to do it, and they would just go ahead and do it. They wouldn't wait around. And these
You're
guys
exactly
are content
right.
to wait around. I'll wait for the minimum wage to go up to $15 an hour. Well, that's stupid. It lacks incentive. Why would I aspire to a better pay?
Or how about this? Go get some training. Or go somewhere else. In other words, improve your own lot in life. Don't make demands on everybody else. Dave, excellent call, my friend. Keep hope alive. I'll be right back.
The only show with a warning label, the liberals. The Mark Levin Show. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
So Barack Obama at the PBS NewsHour yesterday, he's troubled by these voter ID laws, you know. Let's hear what he said. Cut 3, go.
But Congress doesn't move real quickly around here. And if we can go ahead...
Stop. What does he want Congress to do that they're not doing quickly enough for him? What does he want? Massive tax increases, massive new spending and borrowing, massive new powers to the EPA, so Congress isn't moving fast enough. This is what he wants. This is what he means. This fundamental transformation, folks, isn't going on fast enough. You know, this is sick. Let's start over. Cut 3, go.
But Congress doesn't move real quickly around here. And if we can go ahead and move administratively so that our Attorney General can go ahead in jurisdictions that seem to be intent on preventing people from voting and that have...
Stop. What jurisdiction wants to prevent people from voting? I am so sick of this. You mean the administration that wouldn't prosecute the new Black Panther Party for walking around a voting precinct with billy clubs? That one? Is that what he's talking about? Pretty damn outrageous what he and Holder and these other folks are saying. It's outrageous. Go ahead.
Element to it, even though...
Oh, whoa. We missed the real kicker. Go ahead. Start it over.
But Congress doesn't move real quickly around here. And if we can go ahead and move administratively so that our Attorney General can go ahead in jurisdictions that seem to be intent on preventing people from voting and that have a racial element to it, even though...
Stop. Has a racial element. See that? Everything. Everything is race. Everything. The picture ID that the government hands out, it's not racist in every other circumstance where it's required, except voting. Then it's an outrageous obstruction of voting that's aimed at minorities. I mean, this is just sick. It's pathetic. It really is. It's infuriating. Let's go to cut 1. Go.
If, in fact, people start thinking the government's the problem instead of the solution, then what that leaves you is whatever the marketplace does on its own.
Stop. Oh, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's right. So if we stop today passing regulations, there are no regulations. Did you know that? This may shock you. That's right. If we stop today, it's just a wild free market. 100 years of progressivism, of socialism, of statism. Tens of thousands of pages, year after year in the Federal Register. There'll be no rules or regulations whatsoever. And putting the federal government aside, of course, the states never regulate anything, do they? Those of you who live in Maryland and Illinois and New York and California and all the rest of it, they don't regulate you, do they? And, of course, cities don't either. Right, New York? Right, Chicago? Right, L.A.? No. There's no regulations. The problem, ladies and gentlemen, is there's no free market. There's no free market in this country. And they talk as if it's 1640 around here. It's just, again, pathetic, dishonest. Go ahead.
What we've seen is a marketplace that increasingly produces very unequal results.
Stop. You know what would be scary if we had a marketplace that produced equal results? You know what that would be? That would be North Korea. No marketplace at all. If you work harder than somebody else, you may earn more than somebody else. You may not, because you may work stupid. But if you work harder, you may. If you work harder on your studies in school, you may earn more than somebody who drops out of school. You may or you may not. If you go into one vocation as opposed to another, or one profession as opposed to another, you may or may not be driven by material interests, and you may or may not earn a lot of money or a little bit of money. There's a lot of people in this country motivated by different things. How in the world can there be equal results? What does that even mean? That means absolute totalitarianism. That's Cambodia. That's North Korea. That's Red China under Mao. It's misery. It's starvation. It's destruction. This president never talks about liberty. Never talks about liberty. Never talks about private property rights. Never talks about individual initiative. Never, ever. Nothing. It's all government. People start thinking the government's the problem instead of the solution. The government's the solution to what? This man exposes his ideology every time he opens his mouth. I believe him. I see what he's done. I see what he wants to do. I see how he's trampling all over the Constitution and separation of powers. I see it. So do you. So do you. Now we have this radical leftist from Chicago, Luis Gutierrez. He's at a town hall in Virginia, according to my notes here. Now, why would he be at, where is it? Why is he at a town hall in Virginia? Is he there with the Republican majority leader, Eric Cantor? It's my guess, but I don't know. But let's hear what he had to say, this Gutierrez, who now is every Republican's friend. Radical left-wing nutjob. Cut 4, go.
Because what we need to understand is today someone's going to die in that desert trying to return to their families. Women and men are going to die in that desert. Someone's going to lose a finger, a hand, an eye, a life today, because an unscrupulous employer is going to put them in harm's way. Someone's going to die. There's a woman that's going to be raped in a field somewhere in America today, because she has no rights in this country. We need to end that. There are children who are going to cry, and there are marriages that are going to be destroyed because someone is going to be deported today, and there are going to be children that are going to be left orphaned.
That's enough. So why do all these people come into this country? If they're going to be raped, if they're going to lose fingers, if they're going to be abused, if they're going to die in the desert, if this and that and the other, why are they coming here? Actually, that describes what's going on in Mexico under the drug cartels and that pathetic government there. That doesn't describe my country. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't have open borders, if we don't embrace this man's radical nutjob agenda, if we don't take the lawless and make them legal, then all these things are going to happen. And this is one of Paul Ryan's best friends. They've been going around together, saying wonderful things about each other. Same with Eric Cantor. This is what we deal with. Absolute insanity. Insanity. You would think if people come to this country who are being raped, murdered, losing fingers, losing an eye, losing a hand, their marriage, or this, that, why are they here? Why do they even stay here? I wouldn't want to be in a place like that. First, I thought he was describing the gang areas of Chicago under Rahm Emanuel, but then I realized no. Then I thought he was discussing Mexico under that pathetic government, that corrupt government with their drug cartels. No, this man's describing the United States of America. Who would want to escape to this? Nobody. You're a buffoon, pal. That's what you are, a buffoon. But Paul Ryan likes you, so you must be okay. Let's take a call, shall we? Justin, Salt Lake City, the great KKAT. Go.
Hi, Mark.
Yes, sir. Hello. Thank you.
Hey, so I was able to meet with or to talk with Senator Mike Lee the other day, and he had nothing but the highest praise for your book. It was really interesting to talk to him about it.
You know, first of all, I don't know that Mike Lee agrees with everything in the book, but Mike Lee is one smart guy, and more than that, he has enormous integrity.
You know, I can't agree with you more.
Yeah.
So I was part of there was a big grassroots movement here to put him into office, and I was part of that from the beginning. And one of the first things he said was he completely emphasized the importance of term limits, and he emphasized the importance of the government interactions with the state legislatures and our state representatives. And so this was 3 years ago. And those are the exact principles that you're trying to promote in your book as well. And at the town hall, his support for term limits was reinstated. And
you know where I would like to see him wind up on the Supreme Court.
That would be wonderful.
He would be an absolute brilliant justice. He would. I mean, how magnificent would that be? Seriously.
He's absolutely qualified for it as well. He was a clerk there for a while.
He was one of Alito's clerks. And his father was Solicitor of the United States, Solicitor General.
Yeah,
did you know that?
I did.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
in the Reagan administration.
He grew up talking this stuff around the dinner table.
Oh, yeah. He knows this stuff backwards and forwards. All right, Justin. That's good to hear. I appreciate that, and thank you for your call, my friend. Okay, we're on day 3 of, what's her name? The girl that was dancing around with the thing between her legs? Miley Cyrus. Day 3 of that on cable TV. And they wonder why their ratings are going down. Because people don't care about that crap. And you know what's funny about it, Mr. Producer? They're condemning it, and they keep playing it over and over and over again. Oh, isn't this awful? Here, let's look at. Hey, let's have a close-up. Let's keep going. What are you doing? All right, Tea Party patriots. I'm sorry. These people on TV just crack me up. All right, here we go. Tea Party Patriots. It's time for all of us, all of you, to take a little road trip to D.C. You see, on September 10th, 9/10 that is, Congress will take up the continuing resolution which basically decides how much of your money they're going to spend on the federal government. So also on 9/10, September 10th, thousands of Tea Party patriots are converging on the Capitol to demand that Congress use the continuing resolution to stop funding and exempt America from Obamacare. I mean, Congress promised us they'd get rid of it, did they not? Meanwhile, they've exempted their friends, they've exempted themselves, they've exempted big business, they've exempted big labor, they've exempted big government. On September 10th, join the Tea Party patriots in telling these people they must exempt America. Unless you show up and speak up, we can't count on Congress to keep their promises of ending Obamacare. So go to exemptamerica.com. That's exemptamerica.com. Find out how you can attend this critical national rally. It's exemptamerica.com. Now, visitors to exemptamerica.com can also get a very cool free bumper sticker. And the more of these we can put on vehicles, the better. So please consider going to this crucially important event because numbers matter. Exemptamerica.com.
Mark Levin.
You know, no offense, but I would like to ask, and they listen, my dear friends at Fox News, because I admire them so much. Will you stop playing the Miley Cyrus video? I mean, I was just watching during the break. It must have been going on for 3, 4, 5 minutes. Just so the host there could comment on how terrible it is. If hosts and guests want to watch this in the privacy of their own home, then they can do it. But to keep playing it over and over and over again, day 3, maybe it's day 4 actually, it's Thursday. What is the point of this? Look at this. What is she doing with that? Well, she shouldn't be there. Look at that. Let's get a close-up. Now what is she really doing? Hey, any questions, any comment? What are you doing? Cut it out. It's gross. Folks, tomorrow is a very, very important day. You know why? Yes, it's Friday, but there's another reason. 10 a.m. Eastern time. Really, 10 a.m. Eastern. I want you to set your alarms. I haven't even seen this yet. Check out David Brody's interview of me in the bunker tomorrow on the 700 Club, 10 a.m. Eastern on the ABC Family Channel. Notice, ABC Family Channel. And we have an excellent discussion. He asks a number of very, very interesting questions. Not just about the Liberty Amendments, but others as well. And they do an excellent job, the 700 Club does. So if you get a chance, oh, Mark, I work. Okay, we'll just TiVo it. It's the 700 Club tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern on the ABC Family Channel. I think you'll like it. I haven't seen it yet. I have to remember to watch it. Let's take another call here. Let us go to Jason, Arlington, Virginia, the great WMAL. Go.
Hey, Mark, how you doing? Just real quick, everybody with the Syria situation is not talking about the fact that the people that are financing the operation over there for the rebels is the government of Qatar. They've already spent $2 billion, and the reason being is it has nothing to do with human rights. These guys want to build a natural gas pipeline to supply Western Europe, and the Russians are against it because Russia would lose out on a lot of money.
That's very interesting. Now, did you figure that out yourself, or is that written somewhere?
This is covered on a lot of the international press stuff, but somehow in our side of the pond here, it's not getting the coverage that it should. And you have to understand, back in 1989, when oil went down, adjusted for inflation, from 80 to 20, it collapsed the Soviet Union. So they make a huge amount of money.
So what's Obama doing here?
He's playing.
How do you explain him?
Yeah, I think this is a way of trying to knock the legs out from underneath the Russians.
I don't think
the Russians have a lot to lose on this thing. Yeah.
Well, and the Russians are not going to give up on Syria anyway. They've been a client state for decades. So, very interesting point, Jason. Very good point. Thank you. Alec, Lafayette, Louisiana, Sirius Satellite. Go.
Greetings, Mark, from deep South Louisiana and from a fellow Reagan alum.
Attaboy. God bless you.
We love your show. I was just going to remind you of something you may have already known, Mark, which is that in the 70s, following the Roe v. Wade decision, there was a movement to use Article 5 to bring about a human life amendment. And at the time, the runaway convention claim was being made. And my memory is, and my father was a leader in that movement, my memory is that the American Bar Association commissioned a panel. I believe there were 9 lawyers who were asked to look at that. And I recall a blue paperback publication that resulted from that analysis, and it was a unanimous decision by these 9 lawyers. My father used to joke that 9 lawyers agreeing on anything was nothing short of providence, but they concluded that the runaway convention claim under Article 5 was erroneous and would not occur. And I just didn't know if you...
Well, I'm surprised I would come out of the ABA, because today my guess is it would be 9-0 the other way. But you know what? Honestly, Alec, none of that matters to me. I've done my own research. I've really, really studied this. There are very few people in this country who understand it now better than I. There are a few, like the professor who I had on last hour, and 1 or 2 others, but very few. And so there really is, it is not possible for there to be a runaway convention. And right now we're living in a runaway federal government. But, Alec, thank you for your call, my friend, in the great state of Louisiana. Ladies and gentlemen, we salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel, and you, the American people. And I'll see you right here tomorrow on Friday. I'm Mark Levin.